There is a journey that every empath walks alone, a path that is often invisible to the outside world and rarely acknowledged by those who have never experienced it. It is not written about in most psychology textbooks, and it is rarely discussed in conventional therapy sessions, because the empath's experience is so deeply internal that it defies easy description. But if you are an empath watching this, you know exactly what I am talking about, because you have lived it. You feel things before they happen, sensing the shifts in energy before anyone else notices, as if you have an internal radar that picks up signals others cannot detect. You absorb emotions from rooms the moment you enter them, taking in the mood like a sponge soaking up water, your nervous system responding to the atmosphere before your conscious mind has even registered what is happening. And you have probably spent most of your life being told that you are too sensitive, too emotional, or that you need to toughen up and stop feeling so much, as if your depth of perception is a flaw that needs to be corrected. These words have likely been spoken to you by well-meaning friends, frustrated family members, or partners who could not understand why you reacted so deeply to things that barely registered with them, why you seemed to feel everything so intensely while they moved through life with a thicker skin. But what if I told you that your sensitivity is not a weakness, that the very qualities that have made you feel different, even broken at times, are actually the foundation of something powerful? What if the very thing that has made you feel different, even broken, is actually a psychological superpower that most people will never understand or possess, a gift that sets you apart from the majority of humanity and gives you access to a depth of experience that others can only imagine? The research on highly sensitive persons, pioneered by Dr. Elaine Aron, reveals that approximately 1.520% of the population has a nervous system that is fundamentally different from the rest, a difference that shapes every aspect of their experience. You process information more deeply than others, taking in more details and reflecting on them more thoroughly, your mind constantly working to understand the world around you. You notice subtleties that others miss, the small shifts in tone, expression, and energy that reveal the truth beneath the surface, the hidden currents that flow beneath every interaction. And when it comes to emotional information, you are essentially operating with high-definition perception in a world where most people are still using standard definition, seeing only what is obvious while you perceive the full spectrum of emotional color. Today, we are exploring the empath's darkest upgrade: cold, calm, and completely unreachable. A transformation that is often misunderstood but represents the ultimate integration of sensitivity and strength. And by the end of this video, you will understand yourself in a completely new way, recognizing the patterns that have shaped your life and the potential that lies ahead. To understand this fully, we need to examine what the research actually tells us about human behavior and relationships, because the empath's journey is not happening in a vacuum. It is shaped by fundamental psychological principles that govern all human interaction. Studies in social psychology, behavioral neuroscience, and attachment theory all point to the same fundamental truth. Human behavior is far more predictable than most people realize, and understanding these patterns gives you significant advantages in every area of life. Research by Dr. Roy Baumeister on belongingness motivation demonstrates that humans have a fundamental need to connect with others, a drive that is as basic as the need for food or shelter. This need is not just psychological, not just a desire for companionship. It is biological, wired into our nervous systems through millions of years of evolution. Social isolation activates the same threat response systems as physical danger, triggering a cascade of stress hormones that can have serious health consequences. But this need for connection exists in constant tension with our equally fundamental need for autonomy, the desire to be independent and self-directed. Dr. Jack Bram's research on reactance theory shows that when people feel their freedom is threatened, they experience psychological reactance, a state that motivates them to restore their freedom at any cost. This explains why people often want something more when they feel it might be taken away, and why telling someone they cannot have something often makes them want it more, a principle that operates in everything from romantic relationships to consumer behavior. On the neurological level, research using functional MRI has revealed that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain, a finding that has profound implications for understanding human behavior. This is not metaphorical or poetic, not a figure of speech. The anterior cingulate cortex and insula, which process physical pain, also activate during social exclusion, creating a biological experience of suffering that is every bit as real as a physical injury. This explains why emotional wounds can feel as intense as physical ones, and why social threats can trigger such powerful responses, why the pain of being excluded or rejected can be so overwhelming. Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research on social neuroscience, presented in his book Social, demonstrates that our brains are wired to prioritize social information above almost everything else. We are constantly scanning our environment for social cues, threats, and opportunities. Our minds always working to understand the social landscape around us. This means that social dynamics are not just interesting sidelines to human existence, not just something that happens in the background. They are one of our brain's primary concerns, a central organizing principle of our mental life. What this means practically is that the patterns we observe in relationships are not random, not the product of chance or coincidence. They follow predictable psychological laws that can be understood and anticipated. The person who seems less interested often becomes more attractive due to the scarcity principle, because the mind values what is rare and difficult to obtain. The one who walks away often becomes more valued due to loss aversion, because the fear of losing something is more powerful than the desire to gain it. The one who maintains emotional stability while others react becomes perceived as higher status, because emotional control is associated with power and competence. Understanding these laws does not make you manipulative, does not mean you are using them to harm others. It makes you informed, gives you the knowledge you need to navigate the complex world of human relationships. The distinction between manipulation and wisdom is intent, the purpose behind the knowledge. Manipulation uses this knowledge to exploit others, to gain power over them. Wisdom uses it to protect yourself and create genuine connections, to build relationships that are healthy and mutually beneficial. In a world where emotional intelligence determines success more than raw IQ, this information is essential, because it gives you the tools you need to thrive. The research is clear. The empath's darkest upgrade, becoming cold, calm, and completely unreachable, is not just an interesting psychological concept, not just a theory to ponder. It is a real phenomenon that affects your daily life, your relationships, and your well-being, shaping every aspect of your existence. Understanding it gives you something powerful: choice, the ability to decide how you will respond to the world. You can respond from awareness rather than react from programming, making conscious decisions rather than being driven by unconscious patterns. You can navigate relationships with understanding rather than confusion, seeing clearly what is happening rather than being lost in the emotions. The question is not whether these patterns exist in your life. They do, because they are part of the human experience, part of the empath's journey. The question is what you will do with this knowledge, how you will use it to transform your life. Will you use it to understand yourself better, to make sense of the experiences that have confused you for so long? Will you use it to improve your relationships, to set boundaries that protect your well-being? Will you use it to protect yourself from those who would exploit your natural tendencies, to recognize the signs of emotional manipulation? Will you use it to develop strengths you did not know you had, to grow into the person you are meant to be? The path forward starts with honest self-assessment, a willingness to look at yourself clearly and without judgment. Where do you see yourself in what we have discussed today? Are you still in the phase of unawareness, absorbing emotions without understanding what is happening? Are you in the overwhelmed phase, feeling the weight of everything you have absorbed and struggling to find your footing? Or are you beginning to move into the integration phase, learning to use your sensitivity as a tool rather than being used by it? What patterns resonate with your experience? What aspects of this journey feel familiar to you? What dynamics have you observed in your own relationships? The patterns that repeat themselves over and over? And more importantly, what is one thing you can do differently starting today? One small change that can set you on a new path. The research on behavior change shows that small, specific commitments are far more effective than grand resolutions, that incremental progress is more sustainable than dramatic transformation. Do not try to transform everything at once, because that approach often leads to burnout and disappointment. Pick one insight from this video, one idea that resonated with you, one pattern to watch for, one behavior that you recognize in yourself, one behavior to modify, one small change that can make a difference. And start there, because that is where real change begins. Remember, knowledge without action is just entertainment, a pleasant diversion that does not change anything. But knowledge with consistent action is genuine transformation, a shift that reshapes your life. You now have the knowledge, the understanding of the phases and patterns that shape the empath's journey. The next move is entirely yours, because no one can make this journey for you. Choose wisely, because your choices will determine your future. If this resonated with you, subscribe to Human Behavior Intelligence, because this channel exists to help you understand yourself and others on a deeper level, to provide the insights you need to grow. Every video combines research-backed psychology with practical insights you can actually use, bridging the gap between theory and practice. The next video drops soon, and you will not want to miss it, because it will take you even deeper into the fascinating complexity of human behavior. Until then, stay observant, stay curious, and never stop learning about the fascinating complexity of human behavior, because the more you understand, the more you can grow. And remember, your sensitivity is not a weakness, not a flaw to be corrected. It is a superpower, a gift that sets you apart from the majority of humanity. The journey from unaware empath to integrated empath is not easy, but it is worth it, because at the end of that journey is the person you were always meant to be. The person who feels deeply, but is not controlled by their feelings, who experiences the full range of human emotion without being overwhelmed by it. The person who understands others, but does not lose themselves in that understanding, who can offer compassion without sacrificing their own well-being. The person who gives freely but knows when to stop, who has learned the difference between generosity and self-destruction. The person who has finally found the balance that makes their sensitivity a strength rather than a burden, who has integrated their gift with the boundaries that protect it. That person is waiting for you, and the path to becoming them is the empath's darkest upgrade. Embrace the journey, because it leads to the most important destination of all, yourself. The transformation from the empath who absorbs everything to the empath who is cold, calm, and completely unreachable is not about losing your heart. It is about finally protecting it, about learning to be soft with those who deserve it and impenetrable to those who would exploit you. It is about becoming the person who can walk into any room, feel everything, and still remain centered. It is about developing the ability to care without being consumed, to love without losing yourself, to give without being drained. That is the upgrade, and it is the most important transformation you will ever make.